Patrick Bailey's walk-off 3-run inside the park home run will be remembered by Giants fans for the rest of our lives.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and RotoGraphs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already. And please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, my goodness, what a memorable ending, one that I will never, ever forget. And I don't think anyone who watched that game will ever forget. Patrick Bailey's walk-off 3-run inside the park home run was a scene of delirium. We'll get into that. We'll also get into how the Giants are now riding high as the All-Star break nears, and they're playing this critical homestand against two really good teams, the Phillies and the Dodgers. So far, so good, 2-0. And also the prospect of Rafi Devers playing first base, when it might happen, and what kind of ripple effects that will have on the roster and their needs as the trade deadline approaches. But getting to Patrick Bailey, I mean, the story writes itself with the Giants down 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Phillies, who, by the way, have just had a horrible time at Oracle Park. It is a house of horrors for the Phillies. They will be the first to admit it. Their fans, their analysts will be the first to admit it. They have lost now 18 of their last 21 games at Oracle Park. That's 3-18. They're 3-18, and that's during a stretch when the Phillies have been one of the better teams in the National League. They are 7-25 at Oracle Park since 2014, and they're 27-55, losing a little more than twice as often as they win since the ballpark opened in 2000. And they're 1-10 since 2022. Curse of Gabe Kapler, as some like to call it, some being me. And anyway, so they've lost in all kinds of different ways at that ballpark, and that was the icing on the cake. I read some of the Phillies analysis in The Athletic, and it was enjoyable to read. One of the quotes that I particularly enjoyed was, "This ballpark is hell for the Phillies, but this was a fresh nightmare." Giants 4, Phillies 3, and one of the craziest endings to a game in 143 years of Phillies baseball. And then also from that article, quote, "The Phillies have plumbed the depths of despair here, losing 18 of their last 21 games at Oracle Park." So that's the Phillies perspective, which I just always enjoy. I had to watch the replay of that crazy doesn't even begin to describe it, of that walk-off hit inside the park homer by Bailey on the Phillies broadcast. And it was just as glorious as you might imagine. They said they basically had never seen anything like it, and they were stunned, absolutely gut punched and stunned. And getting to Andy Baggerly, I thought he wrote a great piece in The Athletic about this game, and just the whole thing was about the hit and the kind of then history that goes behind it. And so here's some of the history per Andy Baggerly. He says it was the 5th walk-off 3-run inside the park home run in Major League history. The last time it happened was in 1989 when the teams were reversed. Bob Dernier, I don't know how to pronounce, sorry if I'm butchering that, Bob, accomplished the feat against the Giants in Philadelphia What are the odds of that? It was the same two teams. The last time a catcher ended a game with an inside the park home run, Calvin Coolidge was in office. Washington Nationals catcher Benny Tate did it at Griffith Stadium in 1926. 99 years ago was the last time a catcher ended a game with an inside the park home run, let alone a 3-run inside the park home run. The previous Giants catcher to hit an inside the park home run in any context was Bob Brenly in 1984. Any context, just like could have been a 10-0 blowout loss in the 8th inning. But no, I mean, we're talking it had been 41 years since the last Giants catcher to hit an inside the park home run at all. And then, of course, there's Angel Pagan, who ended a game in a very similar way. Like the ball took a crazy bounce off the right center field wall in 2012. And so that was the only other time the Giants have done it at Oracle Park, and possibly in their history, certainly in San Francisco, I believe, and a walk-off inside the park homer. But that was, 2013. And so in terms of Major League history, these are the last 3 occurrences were Angel Pagan in 2013 against the Colorado Rockies with a 2-run walk-off inside the park homer. And then Cleveland's Tyler Naquin had been the last major leaguer to end the game with a walk-off inside the park home run, and that was in 2016 against the Blue Jays. So Baggerly says, to put it another way, these occurrences are not frequent. So it was about the most unlikely outcome you could have possibly imagined, especially when you consider the fact that Patrick Bailey has had a very difficult offensive season. Although he has always had a flair for the dramatic in his career. He, on opening day this year, had a 2-out hit to tie the game and kind of set the vibes for this Giants team going into the 2025 season with a comeback win, which they've done a ton of this year. Down to their last out, Bailey tied the game. But then in previous years, he had a knack for like these huge hits and huge home runs in big situations. Like the famous line, somebody named Patrick Bailey just hit a 3-run homer. This was when Bailey was a rookie, and the Mets beat writer for MLB.com or NewYorkMets.com, whatever you want to call it, hadn't heard of Patrick Bailey really. And Bailey hit a huge homer to give the Giants a lead in New York. And so he's done this over and over, but this year in particular, the offense it's just really not been there. That was just Bailey's second home run of the year. It would have been a regular home run in 29 out of 30 ballparks. It hit the top of the deepest part of that right center field wall, like the very top. If it had hit the bricks, I think that Brandon Marsh, the Phillies center fielder, may have been able to field it, but it hit the concrete above the bricks, and so it just shot off the concrete and rolled up the center field warning track completely away, like shot past Brandon Marsh, so he had to run after it, and Bailey was safe by a ton. And he's a catcher, and he was booking it. Casey Schmidt said he's never seen Bailey run so fast in his life. And according to Baggerly, actually, Bailey's sprint speed is like 26 point something feet per second, which is like 13th percentile. But on that homer last night, it was like 28 point something feet per second. So he's got another gear in him apparently. And sprint speed measures like your fastest runs. And this was 2 feet faster, a significant increase. And just what a moment. I will never forget that. And more importantly, I mean, the memories are very important, as Buster Posey has said. But just as important, it was a win for the Giants, another win when they were facing defeat. So we'll get into where they stand as the All-Star break nears in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope. You called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. Open Phone is offering Locked On Giants listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the result of the Giants winning this game. Patrick Bailey could have just hit it over the wall. Could have been a traditional walk-off, in which case it would have been awesome, but it wouldn't have been one that maybe I would remember for the rest of my life, unlike this one. Or they could have just won the game outright and not had to come back, whatever. But the result is a win. And for this Giants team that was playing so poorly prior to their final 2 games in Arizona, which they won, and then 2 out of 3 in Oakland or Sacramento, and now the first 2 in Philadelphia with a chance for a sweep today behind Justin Verlander, it's kind of like unstoppable force versus immovable object. The Phillies can't win at Oracle, and Justin Verlander can't win at all. So something's got to give. I mean, I would say advantage Phillies, but they might not say that because this ballpark, they just can't win here is how it feels to them. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, we'll be breaking down the result of this finale with Justin Verlander on the mound for the Giants going for a sweep, which would be huge. But regardless, you've won this series, and that's big as they'll have a day off for the first time in a long time on Thursday, and then the Dodgers come into town, and that's it for the unofficial first half. It's then the All-Star break with 4 days off, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then they'll play again on Friday, opening up in Toronto, and then they go to Atlanta. So in the end, the Giants end up with a record of 51-42. They're back to 9 games over 500. The Dodgers lost their 5th game in a row yesterday against the Brewers now, which, it actually arguably hurts the Giants' playoff odds to have the Dodgers lose to the Brewers, because the Dodgers, you're still 5 back in the division. However, this has been a crazy... Has it even been a month? Roughly a month, where the Giants, the day they acquired Rafi Devers, they were 1 game away from tying the Dodgers in the National League West. They were just 1 game back and going head-to-head against LA on Sunday Night Baseball. And they lost, so they were 2 back. And then they became 9 back, not that much longer after that point. And now they're 5 back, so they've gone from almost tied to 9 back to 5 back, in a very short period of time. So it goes to show you how quickly things can change. And this type of thing is possible at the very end of a season, too. I mean, Giants have picked up 4 games in the standings in the last 4 days. And so they were 9 back 4 days ago. Now they're 5 back. So in theory, you could be, they're going head to head against LA. That'll have a ton to do with, do they pull closer and get to real striking distance, or do the Dodgers separate themselves when they go head to head? So the Brewers and Dodgers are underway right now. At the time of this recording, the Giants and Phillies are underway right now in Game 3. I wish I could have got this episode out sooner, but I was planning to do an episode after the finale, but the second game was just too good. The Bailey walk-off game deserves its own episode for sure. But yeah, so Giants are 5 back in the National League West, and in the wild card race, they maintained a 1-game lead over the Padres, who won against Arizona. So at least somebody in that matchup has to lose, which is good. And the Cardinals also defeated the Nationals, so they're 1.5 back still. The Reds lost, and so they're 4.5 back. So gaining a little bit of separation over the teams after the Padres and the Cardinals. But perhaps most importantly, like I said yesterday, I think the Giants' goal, obviously number one, should be to win the division. But even if you win the division, you have to be one of the top 2 division winners for it to really matter that you won the division. Like, being the 3rd best division winner is essentially no different than being the top wildcard team. Both teams host a best-of-3 series to start the postseason. So winning the division but not being one of the best 2 division winners in the league is the same as finishing as the top wildcard team. So Giants are 5 back in the division, but they're only 2.5 back of the top wildcard spot. And that team that they're chasing is the Phillies as the top wildcard team. So they've gained 2 games on the Phillies here by picking up these 2 wins. And the Phillies and Mets are tied with identical records at the top of the National League East. So if the Giants can win, that would automatically, of course, mean a Phillies loss, and they would just be 1.5 back of the top wildcard spot. The Brewers are the second wildcard team currently. Both the second and third wildcard teams will be road teams in a best-of-3 to start the postseason. So it kind of doesn't matter. It just decides who you play, whether you're the second wildcard team or the third wildcard team. The third wildcard team plays the best or the worst division winner, I should say, and the second wildcard team plays the first wildcard team. So, yes. So currently, I mean, it's hard to say because the Mets and Phillies are tied. Phillies hold the tiebreaker, so that would give them the division. So let's just say the season ended right now. The Giants would have to play the Mets on the road in a best-of-3, whereas the third best division leader would be the Phillies. So I'm wrong. The Giants would play the Phillies, in Philadelphia in a best-of-3, and the Brewers would have to go to New York and play the Mets. So either way, that would be tough, but that's just where things stand right now, and it's obviously subject to change. And looking at FanGraphs playoff odds, I think is worthwhile to do now as we get really close to the All-Star break. Giants they've improved their odds up to 55% when they were down at about 33% just a week ago. So to go to improve it like 30 plus percentage points, 20 plus percentage points from roughly 1 in 3 chances to over 50-50, better than 50-50 chances, according to FanGraphs, is huge. So this has been just a very important stretch of baseball for the Giants. You've seen other teams go the other direction. Like the Diamondbacks and Giants had similar playoff odds around the time when the Diamondbacks took those first 2 games from the Giants. However, the Diamondbacks have fallen to playoff odds of 16% after the Giants took 2 from them and then whatever they've done afterwards, and the Giants have moved up to 55%. And there are other projection systems other than FanGraphs. ATC, which averages many projection systems, has the Giants at 58%. and the Bat X has the Giants at 66%. So basically 55 to 66% are the current playoff odds for your San Francisco Giants. So more likely than not, according to projection systems that are generally highly regarded and publicly available, and you have to play. You know, the projections are the projections, but the game is played on the field, and crazy things happen, as we saw last night. So hopefully the Giants, who have 4 remaining games here, 1 against the Phillies, day off, and then 3 against the Dodgers, if you can just split those 4 games, you would end up with a 4-2 homestand against the Phillies and Dodgers. And I said going into it, I would take 3-3 and be okay with that. But, and again, obviously the goal is to do better than 2-2 in the next 4, but you have a chance to really, things move fast, as we've seen this last week with the Giants improving their playoff odds dramatically. And so hopefully they can continue to do that. They were playing their worst baseball of the season, and now they're riding high, winners of 6 of 7. The only game they lost was that one game in Sacramento since the 3rd game in Arizona. So that's good, but they're not quite there yet. You still have 4 games until the break, and it would be great to go into that All-Star break riding high. Right now, they're definitely riding high. So coming up in just a minute, getting kind of granular with the roster, we have an update about Rafi Devers and first base. There was also some comments from Will Clark that surfaced about Devers no-showing for a practice session at first base with Will Clark. So we'll get into that and why I think it's kind of a non-story and the reality of the situation in just a minute, and before we do. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? Hard to be more thrilling than the game last night, but still, with FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even all the regular season games feel like must-watch events. New to FanDuel? New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, here we go. We're going to get into Rafi Devers and what will happen with this Giants roster if he's playing first base. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we will be breaking down the finale. Like I said, immovable force versus unstoppable object. Justin Verlander can't win, and the Phillies can't win in San Francisco. So we'll see what the outcome is there. By the time you're listening to this, you may, or very likely will, already know the outcome of that game. We'll be breaking it down tomorrow. And then there's an off day, and we'll be doing our last round of mailbag questions prior to the All-Star break. So a lot to look forward to coming up. And so, first of all, I read this story on NBC Sports Bay Area about apparently Will Clark commenting that Rafi Devers didn't show up to a meeting that he was going to have with Clark, a practice session at first base. But like the tone of the article, I must say, was very harsh on Rafi Devers, and I just think that it was taken out of context and unfair to write that piece. Like I think it needed to be a little more critical of Clark and less critical of Devers, because I don't know the exact story. I frankly didn't want to give the clip the time of day to give it a click. I know in this business, clicks are where it's at. And so I didn't think it justified a click to hear that, because what we've heard from the actual team is that he is willing to play first base, and that the reason he hasn't played first base is because he's dealing with back tightness. That's the current word. Alex Pavlovich, who's also a member of that media outlet that published that story, tweeted yesterday, quote, Rafael Devers is still dealing with some back tightness. The earliest he would play first base is after the All-Star break. So I don't see anything there about an unwillingness to play first base. And the context of the Clark situation, which, by the way, he said, if you don't show up next time, I'm going to go into the clubhouse and grab you and pull you out onto the field. No, you're not. If you do that, you should be escorted out. Stop it. Just stop it. I understand, you don't want to get your time wasted. And if that's what's happening, look, whatever you want to do, you're going to do. But at the same time, way to welcome the new guy. Come on now. Come on. That just bugs me. And the full context is that it was when the Red Sox were in town. And so if you're out there playing first base, apparently he also didn't hit on the field. And I think it had to do with this sensitive situation that had just gone down in Boston. And then the Red Sox came into town right after that. And that's when this was supposed to be. So I don't know if it was an agreed upon meeting or if Will Clark was just meet me on the field at this time to him. I don't know. And maybe Clark went into more detail. I probably should have watched it now that I'm thinking about it. But at the same time, it was when the Red Sox were in town. And I think he just wanted to avoid standing right next to their dugout while they were all out there. I think he was just trying to get that series against Boston past him. So I don't know, but we've seen clips of him taking ground balls at first base. We've seen multiple. And we're also continuing to hear that he's willing to play first. We also heard he's willing to play third. So these don't add up, and I tend to believe the beat writers and Bob Melvin more than Will Clark. No offense to Will Clark, but there's no reason not to believe the beat writers and the team itself. Why would Bob Melvin be saying these things if Devers truly was not willing to play first? Anyway, the consequences, because I assume he will eventually play first if able, are pretty big, because what it would do, instead of clogging up the DH spot to one player, it would open up that DH spot for any player. And the obvious answer on the roster is Wilmer Flores and Dom Smith. But if you're truly trying to make some noise and not just sneak into the playoffs, but be a very good team that maybe, like I said, is able to win that first wild card spot or win the division and then make a deep run into the playoffs, I think your best roster probably has a guy like Wilmer Flores on the bench able to pinch hit like he did last night, which was also an incredible part of that ninth inning rally, which, by the way, started off with a Casey Schmidt double. Welcome back, Casey Schmidt. And Wilmer Flores, who had just pinch hit one at bat prior, so his second time up, and he just took a pitch for a ball and then exchanged his bat. He called time and just went and got a new bat. He didn't even swing, didn't foul a ball off. It was because there was some pine tar on the bat, and he likes to touch his bat to his helmet while he's loading. And apparently it was sticking, and so he didn't like that. And so he calls time, gets a new bat, and then hits a rocket at Jordan Romano's head past him. Thankfully, it didn't hit him in the head, but just a rocket. It's just kind of Wilmer doing Wilmer things. And I'm not the only one to give that exact quote, but that's exactly what it feels like. However, if he's playing, if he's down at the bottom of your order, that would just give you all kinds of lineup depth. But I think in a perfect world, he's kind of available to start at first base or DH. But you could add at any position if that DH spot gets freed up by Devers playing first. And so as the trade deadline approaches, I could definitely see the Giants making a move to add an outfielder, for example, or a first baseman / DH type. And because part of this is that their bench is not the strongest part of this team. And so this would allow you to strengthen your bench by virtue of having Wilmer Flores on it. And if you add an outfielder, you could have Mike Yastrzemski on your bench. If you had a couple guys, you could have Wilmer Flores and Yaz on your bench, and that would just really deepen and lengthen out the lineup a lot, and your ability to use guys off the bench. So, in conclusion, Devers playing first, and potentially, who knows, maybe playing it well. He wasn't a good defensive third baseman, but first base is quite different, and a lot of guys have been able to be good first basemen, from what I understand, after not being great at third. So Devers doing that would be huge for the Giants, because this isn't just a 2025 thing. This is for 8 years plus the remainder of this year that Devers is under contract. So getting him out there to play first and seeing how he can do would be a big deal, even just for going into next year. And let's not forget about top Giants prospect Bryce Eldridge also being a first baseman / DH. But his biggest issue has been defense, not the bat. And so maybe it's just Devers and Eldridge, or maybe Eldridge becomes someone you could trade for a monstrous return potentially. So there's a lot of, I'm not saying go out and trade Eldridge right now, but at the same time, having a lot of good players is a good problem to have. So anyway, Devers playing first, I just think would be huge, but we won't see it until after the All-Star break at the earliest. We don't know for sure if it's even going to happen, but it sounds like it will if he's able to do it. And he's said it. He's like, I'll do it as soon as the manager tells me I'm ready. So we'll see. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name's Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.